Welcome to Happy Home with Dan and Latane. This is episode 2. We are a real estate couple that focuses on faith, family, and financial freedom.
So today we want to share about our story, where we started and a little bit along the journey of us personally. So welcome. So we both moved here to go to college.
Where's here?
In the Chattanooga area.
There you go.
So I grew up in South Georgia. Dan grew up in Michigan. Complete opposites. We both came here. And
I always say we got married and got stuck. We started buying real estate as soon as we got married. So we got stuck in Cleveland.
This is home and has been home for 23 years.
Yep.
We actually have 3 children. They've all been born and raised in this area. We have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So we have quite a span.
2 boys are older, and then we have a 10-year-old daughter named Zoe.
Yes. So we got married and started just kind of figuring out life like most newly married people. Dan had already bought a house before we met that you were living in with college buddies. And when we met and you started telling me all these goals that you had, it's so funny because my mom still talks about your Post-it notes everywhere, your goals in your truck.
Yeah, I had little Post-it, the 3x5 Post-it notes with goals.
She was very impressed by that. So, but I didn't know what real estate was. I didn't understand any of that. You talked and I was like, okay, whatever.
Truthfully, I don't know that I knew what real estate was.
So, but you had the bright idea of let's buy a duplex before we got married. And I lived in it for a semester with a roommate. We were going to move in there when we got married.
And then, so we had the house that I was living in with my college buddies.
Yep.
Then you lived there, and while we were engaged, we would drive down the little road that was in front of the duplex, and we found a little house that was a lease purchase.
Yep.
And the guy had just redone it.
He did.
And we were like, oh, this is awesome. I don't even remember. Did we put any money down on it? I don't think we did.
We did. We put $500 down.
Woo.
We did.
Okay, so we put $500 down, and we moved in there and lived there for a year. Mm-hmm. And then we
bought our first house, which at the time, I still don't know how we qualified. And I think the real estate agent had no clue that we were going to qualify. But it was a dream home for us.
Maybe it goes back to the faith part.
It does. So we bought that house and moved in right at our year anniversary and lived there for 7 months.
Was it 7?
And then we moved out.
Yep. I was in college. Well, I had graduated with my bachelor's, and I decided to go get my master's in education. And I got an opportunity to be the director of a dorm, to where we could live on campus for free and get paid to get my master's.
So we rented out our house.
Yep.
So we had the first house you lived in. We still own the duplex that we're renting, and now we had our own personal home that we were renting out. Yep. And we still had no clue about what we were doing.
Well, I mean, really, we didn't have the whole mindset of, oh, this is going to be our career.
No.
It was more of, let's
just
buy some real estate.
Properties.
And we were that's why I was going to get my master's. I was going to do the traditional thing of, we're going to have a job and then we're just going to keep on buying real estate. We didn't know that you could do real estate as a career.
That's true.
So we you got your teaching degree, you got your nursing degree, and we just were working through that over the years.
Yeah. So we moved back into our house after you graduated from your master's.
Yep.
And you had been talking for a little while about wanting to flip. We obviously at this time, I think this is when a lot of the flipping shows were starting to get kind of popular on TV. And it was starting to become it was the shiny object out there. Everybody wanted to flip a house, but it was something that you wanted to do. And we started looking for houses, and we finally found one. and bought our first flip house.
And didn't have a clue.
Had no clue. The funny thing is, I love telling people about that because when we look back to that house, like I remember so vividly you asking the plumber to let you watch him how he set the toilet.
Oh, yeah.
Because you didn't even know how to set a toilet. I mean, you didn't know how to do anything.
Set a toilet. He did the sink. Installed the countertop, and I'll never forget. I remember when I wrote him the check, and I remember it was $200. I wrote him $200, and I said, "Man, I appreciate the education. Here's the $200." You know, and I've never had to get anybody to set a toilet again. I mean, it's not that difficult, but it was not knowing.
No, and we had that one room that had stuff on the wall. We had to have painters come in and strip it, but you learned how to do that.
Yeah.
From there, I mean, they had their little tips and tricks and learned how to do that.
We watched them do that.
We did. And I just,
and even to the point of when we were buying it, the bank was like, "Hey, how much are you going to have in fix-ups?" We had no idea. So what did we do? We took a notebook and we went in and we're like, "Okay, it's going to need screws in the ceiling for this sheetrock." And so we took the time to do that. But we didn't. We had no clue what we were doing.
No.
I mean, we just...
And so we worked, we'll think back to that house is where I was helping you scrape floors, and I was getting so exhausted so quickly, and neither of us could figure out what was going on until we found out, oh, by the way, we got a baby on the way.
Yeah, I was cutting the floor out of the bathroom. Now, remember, this was when... You were a banker. You were a teller at the time. I was a teacher. I had just started my first job as a teacher.
And I was finishing up college.
And you were finishing up college. And you were over helping me. I mean, we had one little light shining in that bathroom. And you fell asleep in the lawn chair. And you were supposed to be scraping the pad and stuff up in the other room. And I was like, "What is wrong with you?" And you're like, "I don't know." And then we found out that you were pregnant with Ethan. So that was our first flip.
It was. And the thing is, I do remember when we got down to selling it, and this was just another learning experience, the people that were buying it wanted hardwood because we were going to lay carpet, but they had an allergy and wanted hardwood. So even that was an education in working that out because it was going to be way more than what we had budgeted, but working that out in the closing and how to make all the money work. And so hardwood went in, and the floors actually ended up being really pretty.
It's probably the nicest thing of the whole house.
Probably. And then we sold it and made our first profit.
Well, tell them where we were at, though, at that point.
Well, on that one, because everything was so new and we were really pushing the limits, and we were running late on almost every bill.
About, 29 days?
Pretty close. And
we were almost at that point. So this is the thing, is everything's not pretty.
No.
I mean, this was, God has blessed us where we're at now, but there's been a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. When we were, during that time, if you remember, all my tools were stolen.
I do.
My dad gave me a bunch of corded, it was bricks of drills. Now they got the cordless drills and everything else. But Dad gave me all those tools.
Yeah.
I had them set out on a table. I was teaching. There were some nights that I didn't come, and all my tools were stolen.
Yeah.
So we were 29 days behind. We made a good chunk of money. We were able to pay for a trailer. We bought a covered trailer. We bought a bunch of tools, and then we were able to get everything caught up to where we were current and had a little bit of money left over.
We did.
That was the point that I think for me, it was like, man, this is really sweet. We can make money doing this. Because up until that time, we just had rentals.
And we saw the biggest check either of us had ever seen in our lives. And we're like, oh, wow, this is really ours. We get to do with it what we want. Yep. And which for us, like you said, it was paying the bills up, and bought some tools to move on to the next one. And
which we already had under contract.
We did.
The day we closed, we also closed on our next flip. Go ahead.
Which is also where we learned to develop. We actually were able to subdivide off lots on that one.
Right. That's really how we made the money on that one.
It is.
We fixed up the house, but we didn't make a lot of money on the house, but we subdivided off 3 lots.
Yep.
Had no clue. I went to, at the time, my mentor. He's still my mentor and one of my good friends, but I went to him. I was like, how do I do this? And he just gave us the information to a surveyor and said, you go talk to them. So none of this has been cookie cutter. There's one way to do it.
No. And we just started flipping. I mean, we have found them all over the place and, different avenues. We found them. And then in the midst of that, we wanted to continue growing our rentals, but not even knowing what that looked like. And I remember us buying a rental and it not being exactly what we thought it would be. And
which one?
The duplex.
Okay, Michigan Avenue.
Yeah, we bought that, and we thought at the time, and I mean, this was probably 15 years ago now, we were really impressed. We thought we were buying a really nice piece of property. And we bought this duplex, and it wasn't, I mean, it was barely kind of breaking even.
It was barely breaking even, and the thing is every time someone moved out, we had to go in and spend carpet, paint, all this kind of stuff. So we were breaking even, but then we were taking
steps
a month.
Back.
Yeah, we were taking steps back. So that's when we kind of realized that we enjoyed the flipping because we made money and we were constantly making money with that. And then, but we wanted to cash flow. And the reason that we wanted to cash flow was because at that point we realized, I'd got my master's, I was teaching, you were teaching.
I was.
But I think that was when it kind of hit us that it was like, okay, we love being together.
Mm-hmm.
There's some couples that don't. You and I love being together all the time. And so I think that was when it kind of triggered in our minds is how can we do this to where we can be together every day? And then at that point, I think I was doing a lot of reading too. I was reading a lot of real estate books and realized that this was something that we could do and not have to have a W-2.
Yep. We just started planning that this could be a future.
But just to be honest, it took us another 10 years for you to be able to walk away from your job.
Absolutely.
So everybody has different journeys along the way, but it took us a long time. I didn't quit my job until 2 years ago.
And the thing is, part of it, even though that was always our goal and we were working towards that, we worked together so much on the real estate, and then we would go to our separate jobs. It's like when we got to the point that we were like, okay, we could afford for me to leave, we were still so nervous because it broke the mold of what we're so ingrained in of you have a job and you stay at your job and you retire from your job and you have a retirement, that we were like, okay, is it really okay that I leave my job? Because I don't plan on going back, even though we see that we have the finances to do this with 3 kids, with everything. We can do this. And it took us a long time to we talked about it for like 2 years before we were finally like, okay. And I still think, when I look back to that, I think the only reason we pulled the trigger at that point is because the teaching job I was in was so miserable. In the first 2 weeks, in that new job, I was so miserable. I was making myself sick over the stress. And you and I finally looked at each other and like, we don't have to do this. And we can make a different decision. And I think that's what helped push us over the edge to say, okay, let's take the leap. And we did.
But the cool thing is we had been making steps and really didn't know that we were making those steps by buying this little house.
Yeah.
And if you remember, what was kind of cool about it is up until that point that you quit your job, obviously you were involved, but you weren't involved in the day-to-day. It was, if you remember, I would sit there and I'd have my papers and I would pay the bills, but it would be like at 8, 9 o'clock at night.
I do. I remember.
And even though and I've said this to you a million times, you are the reason why I am who I am today, because you allowed me to work all the time, but yet you took care of the kids. I'd come home and I'd pass out on the couch and you'd be in there cleaning dishes and I'd feel bad. And you're like, babe, it's okay. Just lay on the couch, and then I would go to the fire hall, and you were mom and dad while I was at the fire hall. But then that transitioned us to when you did quit your job, you were able to start taking over, paying the bills, doing things. And then that's when you have really gotten super involved. Like, you were already supportive, but in the day-to-day of doing things.
It was a different role at that point. And like I enjoyed taking that on because I didn't quit my job to do nothing. Because at that point, the boys were in school. Zoe was going to be going to school before too long. And I didn't want to just sit around every day and, have really nothing to do like work-wise. I wanted something to feel like I was a part of what we were doing.
And now, don't you wish you wouldn't have taken that on? Because now you have a full-time job
I do have a
doing
full-time
real
job.
estate now.
Yeah.
So, and now I couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah,
because, just going and looking at properties together, making decisions on stuff. It's like, this is what 23 years ago, when we got married as kids, essentially.
We were.
We knew nothing. We were still in college. We didn't realize 23 years later we would be in this position that we could be together and hang out and just do everything that we do together.
And that's what, when people do ask us, how do you do this? And a lot of people either focus on one question or another. They really want to flip or they really want to have rentals. And it's like for us, that was just a journey of figuring out what worked for us because we talked that duplex, we weren't cash flowing, so we sold it. It wasn't worth it to us. But then we were trying to figure out how can we have rentals but feel like it's worth it to us because we saw the potential to create cash flow every month. And how could we make that happen? And we just started, and even that journey, knowing that's what we wanted, it took us a little bit to figure out that part of it.
And don't you, the other thing is that, we kind of don't talk about is other outside factors like the economy.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, we were flipping, we were doing stuff, and then all of a sudden, you couldn't sell a house.
Yep.
So I had the skills to work on houses, and we were still like, oh, let's buy this house. And then the next thing you know, you can't sell it.
Yep.
And so that's when I felt like, and it was one of those epiphanies in my mind that it was like, okay, we got to do what the market will allow us to do. And we took some of our flip money and started buying rentals.
We did.
And then we started fixing up those rentals. So now we can go back and forth and we can use, the cash flow from our rentals to pay for fix-ups on a flip, or we can take the profit from our flip to buy a rental.
Yeah.
We just kind of adjusted along the way.
We did because we didn't have the extra finances to just, okay, whatever comes. We just had to make it work because every dollar was so tight, and we've got to figure out, okay, we don't personally bring in the monthly income to pay the extra on the real estate. Anything in real estate's got to pay for itself. It's got to work. And we just, like you said, we had to adjust to make that happen because it had to happen. So
It did.
And that's, where I look back to where a lot of, and I guess this is a little unique to our area, is weekly rentals have become so big here. And we kind of found a niche there when we found that people were struggling to have their utilities turned on because they couldn't afford a deposit and first month's rent and utilities. And when we saw that, we're like, okay, how can we, on this side of it as a landlord, how can we help that? So we found a little niche in rent in the weeklies. We'll turn on all the utilities. We've got the apartment ready. You pay your first week and you're good to move in. That's it. And that really kind of pushed us over the edge about, 6 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. And when we found that was another like pivotal moment for us in the real estate and in the rentals.
And I think that leads to another big part of our story is this was not like a get rich quick thing for us.
Not at all.
We have struggled a lot. As we talk about, we took 2 steps forward, we'd take 3 steps back because, we would buy that duplex, but then realize, that's not what we need. And then that's when we found the weekly rentals and we started doing that. So I guess part of like my desire, and I think I know your desire because we've talked about it, is to help people that, this might not be leaving their W-2 job tomorrow.
Yeah.
You might enjoy what you do, but
Absolutely.
This gives an opportunity for them to maybe buy a duplex or 5 duplexes, that pays for your kids' college fund.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Just, allowing people to figure, because there's a lot of people very interested in real estate, because if they don't know anything about it, it's very intriguing because it's just, you hear about it everywhere. You see the flipping shows on TV. You see, the landlords with all these rentals. So it is intriguing. But a lot of people, they don't want to leave their job. But like you said, they're looking for just something extra. Yeah. What if someone just wants a piece of property down the road for retirement? And, when we share our story, all of this is where we've come from and what we do day in and day out now. But it's also when we're talking about helping to lead and guide, that is also where we are at personally, because we have 2 sons that are interested in what we do because that's what they've grown up in. And so we're not only planning for our future and planning for our retirement, but we're also trying to teach our own children how to do this and do it on their own and move forward in this. So it becomes even more personal because we've got it here in our own home.
Right. And
teaching them, and trying to teach them maybe a little bit easier way, because we took a really long, hard road.
We did.
It worked in the end, but it was a long, hard road. And like you said, you didn't leave your job till 2 years ago. And again, back to that, we were talking when I left my job, it was such a big dilemma for us. It was the same thing for you, even though
scary.
I had not worked for, I don't know,
3-4 years.
Yeah, and we knew that we were fine. We didn't go without anything like before. Nothing had changed.
No, God had blessed us even more.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing is since I've quit my job, how much more we've been able to do.
Yes, we have.
Sometimes you can be kind of caught in your own head of, I can't leave my job. I can't do this. But how much God has blessed us since we've been able to focus on this.
And that's the thing. And you and I both talked a lot about before you left the fire department of freeing up your headspace because you weren't going to a job for a 24-hour rotation and being able to truly focus on what we're doing. And it has, the last 2 years, things have kind of exploded for us because we've had more time to focus and haven't had to split time.
And to kind of figure out our dreams. Because that's another thing, that I'm sure that we'll talk about as we get more and more into this. But, just having those dreams, being able to just let yourself think beyond what we're doing right now just to survive. I want to see people go beyond just survival. Freedom to be able to do whatever they want. And this isn't, we're going to go live in yachts and things like that. It's more of, having our house paid off, having, the ability to go on vacation. I was talking to a guy the other day that said, have you ever read, I think it was called 18 Summers, about kids, and you have 18 summers with your kids. And it's like when we finally got to this point 2 years ago, Ethan was 18. I'd had 18 summers, but what was I doing? I was busting tail, you know? So I just want to be able to give people that opportunity.
And just honestly letting people know that you can dream and that dreams aren't always just a dream. Like you really can work and get there. And now, like we said, for us, it took a long time.
It did.
And part of it, we started with zero knowledge, zero money. We were kids. When we got married, I was 20 and you were 23. We knew nothing. We were fresh. I wasn't even out of college yet. You graduated 6 months after we got married. We knew nothing. And, if we can help to just give a path and give some insight on, put your dream down, go after it, and, whatever that is. If it's one rental property, if it's I want to be able to go on an extra vacation every year, what does that look like? And just helping to inspire someone to reach for something that they felt was unattainable.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I think we're not the traditional story.
We are definitely not traditional.
We're not... Sometimes I say this to the boys especially. I wouldn't recommend the way we did it. It was hard.
I agree.
It was really hard. However, it has made us who we are.
It has.
And I think that's what gives us some abilities to talk to people. And, you know, when we say this was not a get rich quick scheme for us, you know, real estate has been very good to us. It's allowed us to make some really dumb decisions along the way.
It has. It has.
But it's also afforded us a great future. And I'm excited that we get to pass this on to other people.
I agree. I'm very excited.
You know, we've kind of been doing that with it was actually one of my son's friends that we've been able to start pouring into.
Yeah.
I mean, even the story of the situation with the guy at the fire hall that, you know, we would stand out in the bay and we would talk, and it was months. And then we ended up selling him a little house. And then, you know, we sold him a 4-unit. And then he bought a piece of land, sold it. And he's just kind of been springboarding, bought another duplex. And he's like, you know, man, I was so nervous to do this. And now, you know, he's got 3 or 4 rental properties, and how it's changed his life.
Absolutely.
To give him some stability, allowing him to gain some wealth. So we're not perfect by any stretch in what we do. You know, there's probably other people out there that, you know, have that shiny, pretty little
Maybe
system.
a little more polished.
Yeah. I mean, we joked as we were meeting with Jeremy, who pushed us to do this. You know, when we went to Virginia to do our little retreat together, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't.
Yeah.
We don't have a pretty little system. You know, we still operate out of our milk crates, you know, the way that I kind of started this years ago. And Jeremy was like, that's it. That's it. Be yourself. Be who you are.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's who we are. We're just very simple, very basic, but we love to be together, and we love to do this together.
Absolutely.
So, you got any more thoughts?
I think I'm just excited part of this to reminisce over some of the things that we have done through the years and put it out there as this was one way that we did it. I don't know that I would recommend or not recommend it, but to look back over some specific deals and thoughts and procedures that we did and followed, and excited to just put it out there and, like we said, start a conversation with people and answer questions. I mean, and we don't have all the answers. I mean, but what we do know, we're happy to talk about. What we don't know, hey, let's keep learning. And it's exciting to look at what can be and how we can just bring people along on our journey, and kind of just, this is just one couple from Tennessee, what we've done. And, you know.
That started from nothing.
Exactly.
You know. And I am excited too. It's like I was just sitting here thinking about as you kind of talked about the different times, you know, like when we bought our first apartment building, you know, that was a big springboard into where we're at now.
It was. And we were so scared, and it took us so long to actually jump in and buy it. But once we did, it's like, wow, it just really opened up a whole nother level for us.
I'm excited to kind of literally how we changed 4 or 5 times of what we've done, and how, you know, so just to kind of explain that and share our failures, but yet through the failures, we've had a lot of successes.
We have. It's been good. And obviously we're still doing this today and buying and moving forward now, and just now, not just what we have done, but walk the journey with us of what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So,
and part of it for us too now, which is kind of fun, is, you know, just like Hayden getting involved with me, you know, going to the mastermind this weekend. And I'm excited to now start passing this on to our kids.
I agree.
I'm really excited. It was cool to see the light bulbs going off in his mind.
Yeah.
At 17, a junior in high school, he's like, Dad, can we buy this? Can we do that?
Yep.
And so now it's not so much us buying stuff, but it's us passing it on
to our kids.
To our kids.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Me too.
Let's continue this conversation the next time. It was good talking with you.
Okay.
Love you.
Episode 3 and 4 will be about our biggest successes and some of our biggest failures. So we're excited to talk with you some more.